Hey folks, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to talk about putting a character on a background and making it seem like they fit. So the hat tip for this particular question comes from Fan Art Fanatic, who provided this prompt for me. If you have any requests on, tutorials or things of that nature, drop me a line in the comments and let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll do my best to see if I can help. So in this first example here, we've got three characters, and it's kind of difficult to know relatively where they are. We can make some inferences as to this character being closest to us, this character being a little bit further away, and this character being in the background. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this, but it doesn't really look like they're all fitting within the same background environment. And the problem with that is because we're dealing with a line that is representing our background. This is effectively the only line there. It's a flat line that it doesn't have any surface or form. So the way I would recommend drawing characters with the background is to consider making a grid. And I've already covered this in multiple videos, and I'll put a link to this in the description for this video. But learning how to draw these grids becomes very important. This is a 1-point perspective grid. And this grid right here is a 2-point perspective grid. And that basically means that in a 1-point perspective grid, you're going to have one vanishing point. In a 2-point perspective grid, you're going to have two vanishing points. So drawing this grid is really, really important because it allows you to create a frame of reference. For example, if I were to create a sofa and call this a wall, I can use the grid to help me lay in my perspective. That's why it's another really useful tool. And I'm drawing this sofa on a separate layer. And I can draw other elements, like say, for example, if I have a coffee table or something that's right next to the sofa, I can just simply project up from the surface. And I can draw a lamp. And match that perspective. So drawing a character now becomes a matter of looking at the scale of the objects that are in the environment and making sure that the character fits into that environment. So we've got a nice surface for our characters to be on. So what I can do is I can simply say, all right, well, I want my character to be maybe closer to the viewer. So I'll put like a reference here, and I'll just create a very simple structure here. And this character now, because of the way he is drawn, he is now appearing closer to the viewer because we have a grid to kind of go off of. And this grid will ultimately be hidden, but we will have objects that are going to overlap that will help create that depth. So I'm just drawing very roughly here so you can see how this character is placed. If I have another character that's, say, sitting on the sofa, then I've got an environment here. I've got this sofa, and I can draw the character's head. I can just start out with these little simple armatures. And let's give him some kind of a drink in his hand. And so now this character is fitting into the environment. So in this case, I'm drawing the props first, and then I'm placing the characters on those props. And this is what I would recommend. So now we have a sense of, okay, how big this character is or how close the character is. This character is also taller. We can see that just by virtue of the fact that the character is, fairly tall compared to where, the rest of the objects and the other characters are in this particular scene. So drawing from a grid really helps. Having a sense of overlap. Let's say if we are looking at this and we're drawing some type of a desk. Here's a chair. We might have another chair here. We'll draw that in 2-point perspective. This is where drawing these volumetric shapes becomes really handy. Drawing that cube in the proper perspective is really, really important. We can extend from that cube to create a chair. And let's go ahead and put some type of a computer or a screen. This chair is closest to the viewer. I'll switch colors once again and make this on a new layer. And so now that we have objects, we can determine what the scale of the object is. Perhaps we have a character that is a female character. Like so. So I'm drawing the prop first, and then I'm drawing the character, and then I'll have the other character over here. And so now we have a sense of scale. I'm just going to fix her head a little bit. And so you can see how that works. So my first tip is draw a grid. Just to briefly summarize here, this grid is basically a trapezoidal shape if it's 1-point perspective. Make the bottom line wider than the top line. Find the midpoint, that's the center of the top edge and the bottom edge. Find the midpoint for the 2 side edges, and then create another grid, like so. If you're drawing a grid in 2-point perspective, you're going to consider the fact that none of these lines, these right-facing lines, are going to be parallel. They're going to eventually converge at some point, and the right-facing lines will also converge to their own point. And from there, you can extend up. These are going to look like trapezoidal in shape. And then you apply the same procedure. Find the midpoint, draw a line, find the midpoint, draw a line. This allows you to block out the environment, making it much easier for you to place your props within the environment for that sense of believability. Now, obviously, I'm simplifying. If you're trying to do an elaborate crowd scene or something along those lines, you know, you might have a more complicated perspective. You might have additional things that you have to consider, but this is the way I approach it. And it seems to make a lot of sense for me. So now that I've got this environment here, I can say, okay, here's the door. Here's a bookshelf. And again, I'm following the perspective lines that I've already established from my grid. And again, I'm not really so worried about details here. And then I can state, okay, put a character in a different color. Maybe the character is not as tall as a door. And so we've got this figure walking in. The other tip that I'll give you is that maybe there might need to be some adjustments. Maybe you don't get it right on the first try, and that's totally a normal thing. This is another reason why it's preferable to keep your character on their own layer. I didn't do that in this particular example, but if I did, I could then scale the character down and move the character around. But really, if you want your character to fit into an environment, I would say establish the environment first, get a sense of scale, and then think about how tall that character is with respect to the environments that are in the scene. And that's the way I would do it. So if you found this tip to be useful, please let me know. And if you have a specific question related to digital art that you would like me to cover on the channel, drop me a comment. My name is Krishna. As always, thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.